to SIETAR Florida. We are excited to present who we are and what we do, and hopefully you'll learn a lot from us. And as we get started, I'm actually going to launch a poll that I'd love to hear some of your input. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce our panel. So with us this evening, we have the founder of SIETAR Florida and also past president of SIETAR USA, and that is Patricia Malidor Coleman. Good evening, Patricia.
Good evening. Bonsoir, Rachel. Thank you for the lovely introduction.
My pleasure. We also have with us this evening Dr. Curtis Curry, who is the current president of SIETAR Florida. Welcome, Curtis.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. And also joining us is a new SIETAR Florida member and interculturalist from Jamaica, Shanoy Coombs. Welcome, Shanoy. Who's on mute, but we saw her say hello. And joining us in a little bit will be our immediate past president, Hugo de Neuville, and current advisor on our board. And we'll see her soon. So a couple housekeeping items before we get started. I do have the poll open. I'm anxious to hear what your experience so far with SIETAR Florida is and how many events you've joined us for already. And we are going to be entertaining questions throughout this session. So I'd encourage you to put your question in the chat so we can make sure that we can respond to it. Or some of the presenters are open to having a question right there on the spot. A lot of us who are teachers and trainers appreciate that and want to get to that while it's still fresh in your mind. And I know we've got a few more people joining us here. So welcome again. And I'm going to pass the virtual lectern over to our founder and Miss Globalicious, Patricia Malidor Coleman. Patricia, go ahead and tell us a little bit about the past of SIETAR Florida, and then we'll be looking at the present and the future in a little bit. And you're on mute.
There we go. I wasn't on mute. I think you put me on mute because I speak too much, but that's okay. Okay. How's the audio? Fine? Good now? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. So definitely, and thank you for inviting everybody to put questions, in the chat. And of course, I know when anybody does any listening to it another time, you can always email us, and we're givers, so we're here to respond. So yes, my name is Patricia Malidor Coleman. I am based in South Florida, close to Miami. Welcome to Miami. Bienvenidos a Miami. Rachel and I were just laughing about that song from Will Smith, how much it shows Miami as a perception, as a tip of the iceberg. And there's just so much more. So I'm mentioning this because why did we found SIETAR Florida? I found SIETAR USA, an amazing organization. But seeing that SIETAR USA represents all 50 states, of course, we know that every state has its own culture. And Florida, as it is, has its own culture. 3 of them, South, Central, and North Florida are so different. Being the gate to Latin America and the Caribbean, which was my area of expertise in my corporate job, I felt that we truly can be an organization that supports the industries, that supports the individuals who come and do business here, but also the region at all levels, from social justice, economic, just about everything. And I found that the Latin American Caribbean region needs support. And when they think USA, they think Miami, because that's the first port of entry for many. So I thought, and I'm going to give credit to Dr. Neil Goodman, who is a longtime member of not only SIETAR USA, but even SIETAR International. When he moved his organization from New York to Florida, he was a newcomer. So in a way, I was a bit of an advisor to him, but he was a big time advisor and mentor to me. And he said, how about doing something in SIETAR Florida? There's just so much work. You know, we were getting a lot of travel industry requests, and that's my area expertise. But for him, he was entering it. And so, you know, supporting each other. And I'm giving this example because, for example, Dr. Neil Goodman is an amazing experienced man who we look up to, but we have actually supporting each other in our respective backgrounds, right? Expertise and industries. So bringing, you know, a local group is so very important. SIETAR USA has local groups. Minnesota, for example, is a big one. Then there's the greater New York region. I believe that there's the Bay Area. Just so many of them. At some point, there was one in Houston, Texas, and they really, really focused on local matters. So think globally, act locally was fitting. I'll be very honest with you. When we started SIETAR Florida, we thought, should we do Miami because we live in South Florida, or should we do Orlando, or should we do Jacksonville? So Florida is a very long state. And that brings me to say that in supporting expats, people that are starting their new careers, interculturalists, you know, students, the one thing that's really important is to be able to reach out to someone. So of course we have Zoom, we have virtual, everything, but the point of a local group is to gather. And having, you know, having a SIETAR Florida in a long state, it's been difficult to meet, but at the same time, it's been a blessing that we can meet virtually like we do. So that's what I want to say about how we founded SIETAR Florida, because it is the gate to Latin America and the Caribbean. And I will say that when I was responding to the poll about how many conferences you've attended, in 2015, when I was president of SIETAR USA, we celebrated the 15th anniversary. Should things have been in order with a conference every year like we have in the past, but we skipped one, 2020 would have been the 20th. So 15 was the 15th anniversary of the birth of SIETAR USA, and last year would have been the 20th. That was an amazing conference in Orlando, and something that I like to see, and that's why we pass it on to the new generation, to the legacy, is to truly see a connection with SIETAR in South America. We have Argentina, Chile, Brazil, and I'm sure I'm missing one or two. We want the Caribbean. It's a powerful industry maker, and I'm so glad to see that we have Shinoy here. We can talk about that. So to be the bridge, and that's what we do. We do cross-cultural, we build bridges, and to be the gate to Latin America and the Caribbean, where everything is vibrant and so much work can be done, but at the same time, so much support can be given, we're in the right place. So hopefully people are interested in contributing or asking for help and guidance and mentoring, and we're there for you for that.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
I'd like to share our poll results here. We have actually a few folks who have never attended a SIETAR Florida event except for this one. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have a couple people who have attended 1 or 2 events, and we have a couple more who have attended 3 or more events. So thank you so much for taking our poll and taking a look at that. Hopefully you can see them. And Patricia, question for you, since you've gone in lots of different circles with SIETAR US and SIETAR Florida, what is your favorite part about being in the SIETAR network?
So as some people know, but I haven't said it, so one of the reasons why I'm called Miss Globalicious, I'm multicultural, multinational. So, you know, ethnically very rich, I would like to call, instead of being confused. I turned it into curiosity and a job. So my roots, you know, I was born and raised in Paris, France. So I've got the European motto, and then the American, but also Caribbean roots via Africa and India. So go for it. So what I love about SIETAR, the global network, is what I love about it, because I was a member of SIETAR France, I supported SIETAR India, SIETAR UK, SIETAR España, and going to their conferences. Most of them So SIETAR USA usually does a conference every year, and I love that. And then every other year, you'll have a conference, either a SIETAR Europa or a conference locally in the European continent. So I just love the networking. I love to support people, to give work to people, and I love to get work. So it's an amazing networking socially. It becomes a great family, but wow, you truly are connected, and your career is enriched through the SIETAR network, locally and globally.
Thank you so much for that. So we're going to move on to the present, and that is going to be our current president, Curtis Curry. Welcome, Curtis. And you're on mute because I muted you.
That's right. Thank you, Rachel. And it was great hearing more about your background, also, Patricia. And I'm here with SIETAR Florida because Patricia recruited me. However, I was interested in SIETAR for many, many years. And in fact, I was a member of the organization because I wanted to receive the journal. When I was living abroad, I ran a project in Central America and got my International Journal for Intercultural Relations, if you remember back to those days, Patricia. So I've been a member for many, many years, but not an active member. And like Patricia, my background is in intercultural relations, and I have a certificate in Latin American and Caribbean Studies from Florida International University in Miami. I used to live in Miami. I now live on the Space Coast of Florida, beautiful part of Florida. I love it here too. And I actually ran the World Trade Institute of the Americas in Miami for a couple of years. And we did international trade education, freight forwarders, letters of credit, those kinds of things. So I've been interested in intercultural relations for many, many years. My wife is from Colombia. I met her in the south of France when I was studying abroad. My son speaks Chinese, and he met his wife when he was living in China. So we have those strong intercultural ties. And I'm excited about SIETAR Florida. Now, SIETAR, as you may know, stands for Society for Intercultural Education, Training, and Research. And that suits me perfectly because training is what I do in my profession. I do leadership development, particularly global leadership development. I love research. I finally broke down, went and got my PhD. And so research is a part of my life as well. And intercultural education, obviously that's part of our lives too. So the goals of SIETAR USA are to enhance awareness of intercultural issues in all interactions. Well, that's our goal here in Florida too, except we want to do it locally. And so we've had a number of programs. I'll talk just a little bit about some of those programs that we've done recently, just to give you an idea of the flavor of the kinds of programs that we do at SIETAR Florida to facilitate communication and respect between and among people of different cultures. We're all about that as well here in Florida. So we share that goal to improve intercultural relations, both domestic and global. Florida is such an amazing state. It's Latin America and the Caribbean. And now there are people from all over the world in Florida too. It's becoming more and more cosmopolitan. Even here in the Space Coast, we have Yuko, who's a friend. We have Brazilian friends. We have friends from all around the globe here. To promote the exchange of information, knowledge, and expertise in the intercultural field. So that's a part of our mission as well. And our vision really is to be an organization where people can come together and discuss ideas, and where they can meet people who are from different culture, where we can learn from one another. So those are some of our goals. And I'll tell you about just some of our programs from our recent programs. Last fall, we had a program in global leadership, 7 tips for avoiding derailment as a global leader, and strategies for success. We've had a number of informal chats where we just talk about culture. And we had a great program on starting a cross-cultural training business, and Patricia participated in that, and Rachel moderated that. We had another one. We wanted to do a part B on that. And so you heard about Dr. Neil Goodman before. He came and did a program for us, a wonderful program on maintaining a cross-cultural training business for Black History Month. We can have Rachel talk a little bit more about this because she was on the panel, but we had a panel discussion, Black in America, and it was moderated by Yuko de Neuville, who is our immediate past president, and Patricia was involved as well. And then finally, just last month, my colleague from Florida Tech, where I am involved with the Institute for Cross-Cultural Management, we have that here locally as well, came and did a program on cross-boundary competence, streamlining lessons for culture and diversity. And he highlighted some very interesting work that he's doing, looking at Hofstede and some of the diversity trends in training as well, Trompenars, and also some of the neuroscience. So looking at how the brain functions. So we had an interesting presentation on that last week. And the last thing I'd like to mention is just to second what Patricia was saying. I've been delighted to be involved with the organization for our contacts as well, from SIETAR Washington, for example, and SIETAR Minnesota. And they do programs as well. And so it's interesting to become involved and meet people. Recently met someone from SIETAR France, and I'm looking forward to attending some of their events as well. Tiagi, or some of you may have heard of Tiagi. But Tiagi does and has been doing for years and years and years experiential learning. He's a world-class authority on that. So I actually went to attend his program that was also sponsored by SIETAR USA. And then finally, the SIETAR USA conference. So there are other links by being a member of SIETAR Florida in terms of keeping informed about what the SIETAR community is doing. Especially here in the USA, but also, as Patricia mentioned, globally as well.
Yeah, let me to add something, Curtis. I'll tell you one thing. Of course, being a member of SIETAR Florida, when you go around the world and go to a conference, you mentioned that you're part of a local group. You're part of the family. You know, you're going to be definitely supported. In 2020, with the pandemic, kudos to Yuko for trusting me with a session that I wanted to do. As you know, I do working in the Caribbean is no vacation, or working in Florida. Living in Florida is no paradise. You know, we have all this perception, right? But then I did working from home is no vacation right at the beginning of the pandemic. And we had like 70 attendees. SIETAR Florida put that together. And it was a perfect timing to tell people you're going to work from home, but you're not alone. And you need to approach it as a real thing. You know, this is not a day off extended for the next 3 months, which is what we thought it was going to be. So thank you, Curtis, for this lineup. Wow, we've accomplished so much. Thank you, everyone. Very proud of the organization.
Thank you, Patricia. And with that, I'll pass the baton to Rachel.
Thank you both. Thanks, Curtis, for your insight. Question for you, since you are the current president, what is your vision for SIETAR Florida? So
my vision is to continue with the mission, which is to promote intercultural understanding. And what I would like to see happen the rest of this year is to focus on programs, finding out what kind of programs people would like, and doing more programs. I think the programs are very, very important, because we give people an opportunity to learn about topics, a broad diversity of topics related to intercultural education, training, and research. Mm-hmm. So that's my vision. And I invite everyone who's on this call to become involved with us. We would love to see you involved in our local group.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'm actually going to launch another poll. And this is all about, given what you've heard so far, how would SIETAR Florida membership benefit you? I'm curious to see what you've gathered so far. from what Patricia and Curtis have shared about SIETAR Florida. I think all of us on the board of SIETAR Florida, we're all members of SIETAR USA as well. So there's definitely a connection between SIETAR USA and being a local group of SIETAR USA. We're a subgroup of SIETAR USA, if I can say it that way. We are considered a local group. There's a SIETAR Minnesota. There's also SIETAR, I don't think they're Washington, D.C. I think they're actually tri-state. I think that's what they're called. And there's one coming up soon that is called SIETAR Atlanta. And there's a couple who are inactive at the moment, but there are some other SIETAR local groups that are coming up as well.
Yeah, I think SIETAR Atlanta is official as of very, very recently. So you're absolutely right.
Recently.
Yeah.
Queasy was working on that, which is really great. Yeah. So we're going to transition now. We've talked about the past of SIETAR Florida. We've talked about the present of SIETAR Florida. I want to talk a little bit more about the present before we get to the future, though. Professional development is something that you saw on the poll. This is a space where we can share a lot of our insight. This is a spot where we've had Dr. Neil Goodman do presentations. We had Dr. Rich Griffith last month do a presentation on some of the research he's done. Curtis has done quite a few, either being on a panel or an actual presentation, and Patricia as well. So there's so many different people in SIETAR Florida that have a certain angle or a certain niche that they fit into. And it's a really great place. Like Patricia said, we're a family. So we share whatever insights it is that we are gaining and how we are working. So Janet, thank you so much for your question. The question is, can we explain a little bit more about the governance? Are the SIETARs worldwide interconnected? And is there an overarching international body under which all individual country chapters fall? I'm going to defer to Patricia for that question.
Oh my God, quiz time. Okay, I'm ready. I studied.
Overall, SIETAR worldwide structure. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we have national groups, which SIETAR USA is a national group, and then within SIETAR Europa, you have national groups. So SIETAR Europa is the only one that's overseeing all of the SIETARs. If you're a member of SIETAR Europa or a member of SIETAR France or Spain, for example, you have some connection. But as far as a global SIETAR, the only thing that we have about global SIETAR is bringing all those countries together. So as president, I was part of the global SIETAR leadership. We met once every 6 weeks. All the presidents spoke, and we saw how we can support each other with any kind of trends, topics, issues. So, for example, even though we've been virtual, we've seen some great work done around diversity, equity, and inclusion after 2020, where everything kind of blew up, right? With how diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important. So we've seen a lot of collaborations, a lot of panels created. We have I'm not sure what it's called, but I don't know if it's SIETAR Asia, but based in Singapore. We have SIETAR Europa that did some wonderful panels, but within those panels were people from the different SIETARs. So one of the benefits that I will say is truly to, once you're a member of one SIETAR, so to answer Janet's question about governance, you have access to the world, right? So you have access, you'll get priority speaking engagements, for example. You'll be called upon because you're a member, and this is all volunteering. People have been telling me, you've been on the board and president for about 15, 18 years. Why would you do that? Wow, it's paying it forward and it comes back. So there is no global governance, but there's agreements. And then within SIETAR USA, we have local groups. So SIETAR Europa has national groups and SIETAR USA has local groups. And then of course the national entity. And you have SIETAR Japan, You don't have a SIETAR Latin America, but you have the national ones, Argentina, Chile, Mexico, for example. And this is why we want to bridge and do more, because we do business together. So I hope that's answering your question, Janet.
Thank you so much. Yes, she confirmed that you did answer that. Thank you very much. And Curtis added also in the chat that Argentina, Italia, Brazil, and France are quite active. And we actually send one another invitations to events and invite everyone. So there is that connection between SIETAR USA and then the other entities of SIETAR across the world. So in true form of intercultural collaboration, we are living that out with SIETAR Florida and also under the leadership of SIETAR USA.
Yes.
I'm going to share the results of our poll. I think it's really important that we understand what do we all want to get out of this. And that was one of the things that Curtis just mentioned, that he wants to know, what are people looking for? So I'm glad to see that people are really interested in sharing and gaining intercultural insights. That's one of my favorite parts of being in the SIETAR Florida and the SIETAR USA network. Networking with interculturalists, yes, absolutely. And that may or may not play into transitioning into an intercultural profession, which looks like 2 of us said that that is something that they're interested in. Nobody is here for being an advocate for social justice. I personally would have marked that one off because that's a big thing for me personally. But, you know, we're all crafted to be different people. So I appreciate everyone's honesty and openness with these questions. Thank you so much. So now we're going to transition to the future of SIETAR Florida. We talked about our beginnings. How did we get started? We talked about what are we currently doing as a local group with SIETAR Florida. And now I want to invite to the stage Shinoy Coombs, who is our newest member of SIETAR Florida. And I'd like her to share a little bit about why she joined and what she's looking for and what does she hope to do with us.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me, Rachel. So, just listening as well. And this is what attracted me to the SIETAR network. When I studied at the master's level and I did intercultural communications and international development, I became aware of SIETAR via SIETAR Europa. And so once I got back to the Caribbean region, I started looking to see what SIETAR networks existed. I knew about SIETAR USA, for example, and then SIETAR Florida was the closest for me. In Jamaica, there's a running joke that Florida is Kingston 21 because we have Kingston 1 to 20, and Florida is literally just right next door. So also because of some of the close realities, there's a dynamic Caribbean population in Florida as well. There's very close proximity as it relates to the general Latin America and the Caribbean market, etc. So for me personally, SIETAR Florida was the closest option I had in the absence of a SIETAR Caribbean network. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't just a matter of closeness, it was a matter of networking and stuff as well, because an interesting dynamic for me was that I had a career before. So I worked in development communications. And even before I knew what intercultural communication was, I later discovered that I was kind of using some of the skill sets because my work took me into different countries. Mm-hmm. And I was interacting with people from different spaces. You kind of learned a little bit about the customs and the differences, and now how to just really treat everyone with a certain sense of respect, kind of listening and engaging persons. So importantly for me as well was that being placed in a UN organization where I was working with people from very different backgrounds, we were having cultural clashes. No one necessarily knew that that's what these were, but it was creating real conflicts. We were not working together in the ways that we should. And so once I went on to study intercultural communication, I got that light bulb moment, like this is literally what we have been missing in our team dynamics. And so having completed that program and going back into the development communication space, for me, intercultural communications, cultural awareness, diversity and inclusion, different sides of the coins, as you may call it, it really enlarges your territory in terms of how you're interacting with others and how you're collaborating. So for me, that was particularly important to not just keep that knowledge to myself, but to be imparting it to members of the teams in which I'm occupying and the different spaces. So SIETAR Florida has been particularly important in that respect because I've been discovering that there are other people out there who are not just passionate about intercultural communications, but I've connected with Janet as well, who is an interculturalist in Jamaica. I've known that Patricia traverses the Caribbean region. Curtis as well has some Latin America connections. And so even as I'm working along with members of the diplomatic corps within this region, there are always collaborations to be forged, and I know I can call upon Patricia or Curtis or Rachel or anyone who's a member of SIETAR Florida to help me in delivering some of the programs that I'm working on, because even in terms of a matter of proximity, there are global and regional examples that they can use, whereas I may be able to do country-specific examples. So for me, SIETAR Florida has just been a powerhouse in terms of where networking is concerned, in terms of learning more as well from persons who would have gone along the journey for us. And I found the particular presentation that Curtis referenced about, I think it's transition into your intercultural career, that was a very awesome sort of engagement for persons who are moving from academia and are not sure how to move the skill sets that they have in that space into practice. So in a mouthful, those are some of the immediate benefits that I've had from being a part of the SIETAR Florida network.
Thank you, Shanoy, for sharing. We're so glad to have you in our network. Shanoy is a powerhouse if you haven't had a chance to work with her yet. She is such a gift to us, and I'm so glad that she joined one of our other events a month or two ago and got connected with us. And that's really what it's all about, is being able to interact with one another and network and have a variety of folks that can collaborate with you and help in whatever area you're trying to break into, or if you're already in that area, mentoring someone to bring them over to that area of expertise. It's pretty amazing. So thank you so much. I actually want to circle around because we have our immediate past president, Yuko de Neuville, on the call with us. And Yuko, welcome.
Thank you, and sorry, I apologize for being late.
Oh, no problem at all. Glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad I was able to hear a piece of what Shanoy said, and nice to meet you, Shanoy. Nice to meet you, everybody. So it's a pleasure to be here. So the question I'm supposed to answer is what SIETAR Florida, what SIETAR brought to me, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it brought to me a tremendous network, I would say, because since I've been in Florida, I had the opportunity to meet Patricia first through a friend of us, through a French friend. And I was able to go to the conference of SIETAR USA. It was in San Diego. And I met a lot of people from all around the world, I would say, because I was able even to meet fellow SIETAR Japan members, and it led to some opportunities as well, because thanks to this network, I was able to give presentation in universities in Tokyo. I was not expecting that, of course. And so it's incredible. I met so many great people. I went to the other conference in SIETAR Atlanta as well. And I think it's a great to be able to give webinars, to meet people, to network, to share knowledge as well, because I think we are all unique and we have so many different things to bring to the table. So it's a great experience, and I'm very looking forward to continue this journey with the SIETAR.
Thank you, Yuko. I actually want to ask you, as the immediate past president, what was that like for you being in leadership with SIETAR Florida, and what were some of your favorite moments?
Mm-hmm. My favorite moments, I would say, I think the team effort was the best part. I had the support from Patricia as a founder of SIETAR Florida and past president of SIETAR USA. I had a great team also. I had Saskia helping with the communication. We had Michael, Leslie helping, and I had a great past immediate president, Wayne Henry also. So it was a team effort. And that's what I really loved about being in a leadership, is you're never alone. And you have a team of volunteers also helping in different roles. So that is amazing. And that is why also I want to help you, Rachel and Curtis, and the leadership team this year as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, come.
Well, thank you, everyone. We have now talked a little bit about how we got started in SIETAR Florida, where we came from, talked about what are we doing currently, and we also talked about where are we going and what do we hope to get out of it. I wanted to share also some future vision. We are looking at a program for the end of June that is going to be a transgender boy, actually 16-year-old, and mother, and kind of talking about that part of culture in our society. It's interesting with the term culture, a lot of us who have had a background in different cross-cultural experiences, when we hear the word culture, we immediately think about different countries, different ethnicities, language groups, races, and all sorts of things like that. But there's actually a lot going on with the word culture in general. And that's something that SIETAR USA does address and has a variety of programs. The LGBTQ plus community is one of their focus points, because that in and of itself is its own culture. And then each one of the groups represented by all those letters have their own culture as well. And I like to share the definition of culture being a group of people who share the same beliefs and values, because that could be American women, that could be professional women, that could be people who work in IT. There's so many different ways that we could actually define culture, but that's the working definition that I tend to stay with. So that program is actually slated for Wednesday, June 30th. We're still putting together some details on that. So I have been working with Curtis this year as a board member, and I call myself the program's ambassador. And I've been working with him and the rest of the board on putting together programs this year. And we've shared a couple of programs that we've done already. We covered the topic of unconscious bias as it relates to remote working. And that was something that Patricia mentioned, that she also was in that corner at the beginning of the pandemic. We also had something about global leadership and some of the pitfalls that you don't want to fall into, led by our very own Curtis Curry. And we've also had things about how do you get started in the intercultural field? And that was a fun discussion as well with Yuko, Curtis, and Patricia, where they all shared different phases of their journey being in the intercultural field. And then we followed that up with Dr. Neil Goodman, who has been in the intercultural field for 30 plus years. And how do you sustain an actual intercultural business? Any of the programs that we've had this year, we've recorded those. We have a YouTube channel. We are on Instagram, LinkedIn, and on Facebook. So we're trying to reach whoever it is that we can to make our network as great and as effective as possible for all of our members. One of the things that I wanted to have all of our panelists discuss briefly is some people have already mentioned this a little bit, but Patricia, I want to start with you. How did you get started? Like, what drew you to an intercultural field?
So the intercultural field, first, it's who I am, right? The curiosity of being biracial, multicultural. I mean, I grew up in Europe, father in the Air Force in Germany. I didn't know the exotic brown side of my family until at some point I moved to the Americas, specifically to the Caribbean, and it was the biggest culture shock. So curiosity, first of all, of what am I? Number two, dealing with culture shock in a place where I look like everybody, but don't sound the same. And it's kind of, I feel like kind of rejected, the disconnection. So the name of my company is Easy Work Connections. And I created it because that was a story of my life. After finishing my studies, I worked in Miami and I quickly rise to a position, executive position, being in charge of Latin America and the Caribbean, franchise management in a company that's part of the travel industry. And it felt so natural, like first my staff in Miami, my direct reports, my superiors, my clients. It was just like such a normal thing to see what was going on and how to communicate and how to treat everybody with a platinum rule, which is, treat them the way they want to be treated. So it kind of came naturally because of who I am. And I wanted to expand that. So when I was pretty successful in my corporate job, reporting to Chicago on what they should do, because otherwise they would lose business in Latin America and the Caribbean, I felt kind of strong for a young, woman of color who at first was not very welcome, based again on bias. So I went through everything. I went through the challenges, many obstacles that I, of course, saw as opportunities to grow and use relationships to build trust. So for me, I became an interculturalist. At some point, there was and I tell everybody that you need to find the issues that you have in your career. When do you leave a job? When do you switch jobs? When do you start your own consulting? For me, there was a conflict of interest when, the different companies that I was interacting with just wanted what I had. And I couldn't because they were under different brands. So I quit and transitioned to having my company become my first client and then others. So I became an interculturalist per se when through all my travels, when I was coming home, besides taking care of my kids and being with my husband, I was feeling a little lonely working actually in a small office until I traveled. And I said, let me see what I can do. Let me reach out to some companies out there to see how I can link language and culture. And then this is how I found in Lingua School in Berlitz, and I just reached out to them. And they were actually looking for cross-cultural consulting. I'm like, what is that? Right? And I realized this is what we've been doing all along. And this is how, and I'm using this specifically because it was supposed to be to practice my French more, writing, reading, interchanging with people, even though I was using those languages. I just felt that if I was teaching, I would be reviewing some of the basis of my Spanish and my French, for example. And long story short, which is always long with me, guys, get used to it, I found SIETAR through that. And somebody said, you have to go to this conference. You don't know SIETAR, you need it, and they need you. And I'm saying that to everybody that's there. If you're there, you're being called to something. So being an intercultural started with me. And then it was part of everything that I did after that, from my studies, international business, languages, to being responsible of a region that was basically inbound globally in tourism. So yeah, that's my story. It's pretty unique, but believe me, it is not that unique in the sense that a lot of people have those kind of aha moments that this is who I am. I can turn this into a passion and mission and job.
Thank you so much. So we do have a question for you. How do you promote your services, or did you gain business solely by networking?
So that is something that actually I teach because I am so blessed that being so relationship oriented, that I have said no to, at the time, I'm showing my age, Yellow Pages would be calling me. Do you want to put an ad in the Yellow Pages? Do you want to do this, do that? And it was word of mouth. It was basically my reputation. And also because I believe in excellence of customer service, I would say, your satisfaction is going to be my marketing tool. So yeah, for me, it's networking is huge. It's not for everybody, but it's worked for me. It's part of my DNA. It's pretty much a family thing. My mother's very much like that. We build relationship, we build trust, and after that, people say, go to her. And when they go to her, I'd better deliver. So that's it. That's it for me. That's basically what it is. Getting to be known and getting people saying, that's who I want, or that's who you want. You want people to refer you, to speak about you.
Thank you so much. I dropped a link in the chat. We actually had a panel of folks from SIETAR Florida, Patricia, Curtis, and Hugo back in November on how to start an intercultural business. So if you want to see more details of how to get started, marketing, social media, networking, check out that video. There's going to be a lot of great tidbits in there. I'm going to pass the baton to our current president, Dr. Curtis Curry. Could you share a little bit of your beginnings and getting started in an intercultural field?
That's a really great question, and I find myself going all the way back to my youth and studying history, because with your definition of culture, more general, broader, the nice thing about going, if you have a passion for history and really love history, you're transporting yourself to another time, another place. And you can transport yourself to medieval Europe, or 17th century France, or China. And I think that really spurred my curiosity and this love for learning. And that continued when I got into university. I studied history and political philosophy, and then international studies, as I mentioned before, from FIU, which has a program that's really focused on international development, Latin America and the Caribbean especially. And that opened up opportunities for me with the World Trade Center. And I spent time abroad also in England. I studied at University of Leicester for a year. Again, political philosophy and history, not business yet. And also at Oxford for a summer. I ended up playing rugby in France. I hitchhiked across France and was adopted by an English rugby team. And I ended up playing against the French with the English rugby team, even though I'd never played before. And, when I think back to my interest in intercultural, that was really important in terms of my formation. I actually liked the French, so I went back the following year and did another year abroad, and had a great time there. I met my wife there as well, and she's from South America. She's Colombian, came back to the United States and learned Spanish, and eventually picked up Portuguese and started my business. And we do primarily leadership development, but we work across a lot of different cultures. So that's how I got started. And I also work with Florida Tech. They have an Institute for Cross-Cultural Management. We'd like to, and they're getting more involved with SIETAR Florida as well. I think that's a really good match.
That's great. Thank you, Curtis. I actually dropped the link into our chat on the presentation that Curtis gave to us about a year ago, actually. I think it was last May or June, all about avoiding derailment as a global leader. I guess that was April, as a matter of fact. So I'm now going to invite Hugo to the virtual stage. Hugo, how did you get started in the intercultural field?
Thank you for this question. Yes, I really relate to what Patricia and Curtis said, because I think my intercultural journey also started at a young age, since I was born, I believe, because my parents are French and Japanese, so it's been a multicultural journey, having parents who have different languages and different cultures. And I also was born and then raised in 2 countries also, in France and Japan. So I have always had this passion for different cultures, different languages. And as a matter of fact, I wanted to become either an interpreter, to be able to work among different languages, or I wanted to be a flight attendant to be able to travel around the world. So it didn't happen, but then I wanted to be a journalist to be able to be on the plane all the time. And finally, I went into international business studies and became a sales manager in a multinational company. So it was great because it helped me to work with clients and coworkers from different countries all around the world. And my journey as an interculturalist, I would say, as a trainer, started when I moved to the US. I followed my husband, who is also from a different country. He's a Vietnamese, French Vietnamese. So when I followed him in the US as an accompanying spouse, I had to reinvent myself, reinvent my career. And I went into the coaching and intercultural training field. So it has been great, and SIETAR has helped me a lot. Patricia has been my mentor, is still my mentor. She also helped me discover this field of intercultural training. And to me, it's been very passionate. It's my passion because I can use what I learned as a sales manager, working with people from different culture, and now I can help people navigating different culture and languages. And so it's been great. And now I'm more focusing on transition coaching. So it's another thing, but that's something else I'm doing too. So thank you for this question.
Thank you, Yuko. And if you want to hear a little bit more about Yuko's story, she was participating in the SIETAR Florida bias program that we had almost 2 years ago. So that link is in the chat now too. So Shanoy, how did you get started in the intercultural field?
Okay. I think by virtue of my first question, I kind of gave a bit of insight. So I think it was a mix of a love for travel for one, a job that gave me the opportunity to move into different spaces, because I started off just studying general media and communications, but I always wanted to focus more on the good side, how to use communications to positively change lives. And so I focused more on development communications. And so I would have been working on projects to make lives better for people. So I think by virtue of that, I already had some kind of inclination that I really wanted to understand people's needs a little bit better. But I just viewed that as communication, and the mix of travel, my work putting me in spaces where I got the chance to meet people from very different backgrounds and being very aware. So when you go into a Mayan home, for example, if someone offers you a meal, it's very disrespectful, even if you're full, to decline the meal, because the head of the household, he's sitting there and he's looking on, encouraging you to enjoy the meal. And then you kind of learn pretty quickly while you're in these spaces about what are some of the unwritten rules of behavior and that sort of stuff. And then within those spaces as well, you start to see, if you do not become very aware, or if you do not consider these as well, it can really create conflicts. But I think what cemented it for me is that in a headquarter role, my communications department had persons from very different countries. So it was a very different national context, and we were just always not getting along. So it was just seeing like, oh, the French are like this, or that Jamaican girl is like this, or, oh, my co-worker from Australia is like this. So it was always name blaming based on people's country that they were from. And then, but at the other end, you would see someone else from Australia who they were getting along well with their co-worker and they seemed nice. So what was the problem in my department? And I think I couldn't pull together those gaps as I mentioned, but I knew when I wanted to go back to do my graduate studies that I wanted something that pulled together what I already was doing in communications and also what I was doing in the development field. And so in the research process, I landed on intercultural communications and international development at the University of Sheffield in the UK. And so I think that program connected all the dots for me. And so once I'd gone through that, I could see where lots of the conflicts I was having with my co-workers, lots of the project challenges that we were having, because we would be implementing projects across the Caribbean region as well. And I wanted to just highlight that even within the Caribbean, people often don't think about how very different our cultures are. We're looped in as one Caribbean region. But I found moving between Jamaica and Barbados and Belize and Trinidad, etc., that there were just very different cultural dynamics to navigate. So I think having done my program, it kind of pulled all the dots in place. It was like I literally had a haha kind of moment to say, this is the real challenge that we're having, and our efforts at collaboration were in fact being thwarted by the differences in our cultural backgrounds and what culture means, not just in terms of the differences in our country, but even the differences in terms of how we are socialized and all of that. So having had that sort of clarity, I just knew it was something I didn't want to keep to myself. My mom has been a teacher. And so when persons ask me at a young age, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a teacher. I went into the media and communications field. And so when people say, oh, you could still be a teacher. And I say, well, I already do, in a very different way, but through cultural awareness training, through intercultural communications domain, you do get to teach and learn and kind of get to encourage people to reflect on the choices that they're making every day, or the unconscious biases that they don't know they have that is affected their choices. So for me, that's how I kind of landed there. It's a matchup of work and the desire to go back to school, and then some of the experiences which kind of made me realize that something was missing. And then once I found what that missing piece was, I was like, I really need to share more to help other people to navigate this.
Thank you, Shanoy. I share that same love of teaching. I actually got started because I was a French teacher. Occasionally I would have a Spanish class, but my primary was teaching French at a public high school in the US. And I discovered very early on, working in a remote, very rural, agrarian type of, not even a suburb, just way out rural in the United States, that sometimes it was a culture clash between city versus country. And sometimes it was actually another type of culture, which is what we were thinking about earlier when it comes to countries, ethnicities, and language groups. So I discovered early on that since my kids were very country, and a lot of the places we were looking at, such as Paris or Yamoussoukro or Port-au-Prince, were very urban in nature, that there was a little bit of a culture clash there and a cultural misunderstanding. And I started digging into it a little farther and discovered that there were several dimensions of cultural intelligence. And that's really how I got into walking away from public education and coming over into a more corporate-based teaching and training and instructional design sort of area. So thank you so much, Shanoy. We have very similar backgrounds indeed. I want to thank everyone. I have one more poll that I do want to launch. And does anyone else have any questions? I want to be respectful of the time. I know we started we passed 7 p.m. Eastern, but I have one more poll for you. I'm curious to know who's ready to join, because this is an awesome organization. We have so many great people here. It is $30 for the year. We have a form that you'll fill out, and then we also have a PayPal that's set up for all of that as well. And just curious, who is ready to join? And we thank you for joining us this evening. And also, if you have any questions for Patricia, Curtis, Yuko, Shanoy, or myself, we'd be happy to stick around and answer those. It's like we've got some responses coming in. Thank you for that.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say hello to my SIETAR family. I'm here by invitation of Pat and Patricia, and I am I am already a SIETAR member, but I need to update my membership, so I'll be sending my dues in and everything. But good to see you, Pat, Patricia. Good to see you, Yuko, and good to see you all.
Thank you, Panye.
Welcome.
Thank
so
you,
much for
Panye.
joining us.
Yeah. Rachel, allow me to say that, we have a conference that's face-to-face since 2018. We haven't had one for SIETAR USA in Omaha, Nebraska. And people who are members of a local group, they actually get a discount when they join SIETAR USA. And after that, you also get a discount of the conference. So it's really quickly, the $30 is truly an administrative fee, but it's not to make money or anything like that. So it's just to be officially part of, it's a little marriage contract with lots of promises of happiness more than anything else. But yeah, it's got some good advantages.
Thank you, Patricia. I am putting some of our contact information in the chat. Love to hear from you. Please reach out to us so we can get that party started and get you into the fold of SIETAR Florida. It really is a wonderful organization where we have people that have been in the field for 30 years, and then you have people like me who are trying to break into the field and maybe hasn't decided what she wants to do when she grows up. Anyone have any questions for any of our panelists and board members?
I'd love to hear who is there that we haven't seen before. I want to hear about you. Why are you here? What do you want to know? What do you want to bring to the table? Come on, don't be shy.
Yeah, please drop it into the chat, or also open up your mic. Let's hear from you. And I did just drop our email address into the chat so you can catch up with me there. And I will make sure that I get you our form and our link for PayPal. Appreciate you responding to us that way. And overall, thank you everyone for coming this evening and hearing about our organization. This is a local group, SIETAR Florida, that is part of SIETAR USA. Patricia, Curtis, Yuko, and myself, we're all members of SIETAR USA. Our primary focus, however, really is SIETAR Florida. This is where we live and where we work and where we network. And this is a big priority for all of us being local here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're all on LinkedIn. So for me, make sure you look for Patricia Malador Coleman. Malador is my maiden name, and it's easy because there's many Patricia Colemans. And as we know, let's find our uniqueness somewhere, and you will definitely find us. So please connect, and I'm happy to support you and get to learn about you as well.
Yeah, and we have Janet and Shanoy, both from Jamaica. So we are expanding our borders for folks who are not just in Florida, any of the surrounding states or across the country, into the Caribbean or anywhere in the world. Anyone who has an interest in living, working, or networking with folks in Florida, we certainly want to welcome you into SIETAR Florida. And Ingrid, welcome. You have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm a part of the Global Jamaica Youth Diaspora, and I was invited by Shan. So I'm just here just to hear what SIETAR is about and to get more information, then decide whether I want to join.
That's wonderful.
By profession, I'm a teacher.
Looks like we lost you a little bit there.
Keyword, she's a teacher.
Yes,
Yeah.
I heard too. She's a teacher. She's trying to decide if she wants to join us.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, welcome. We're happy to have you. All of our programs are free. And whether you're a member or not, we always have our programs free. So feel free to join us with any of the programs that we are hosting. We post them on our LinkedIn page. We also are on Instagram and on Facebook. You can catch up with us on any of those channels, and be welcome every time we have a program. We'd be happy to have you, Ingrid. Thank you.
Awesome.
Janet, you have your
Thank you.
hand raised. Welcome to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Rachel, and good evening to everyone. Just to say thank you very much for this event. Very interesting. I've known about SIETAR for a while, but didn't know the ins and outs of it. So this has been very useful for me. I'm very well connected to my dear friend Patricia. We work together extensively, so I know how dynamic she is. So it was not at all surprising for me to hear how many people she influenced, not only in terms of joining CHR, but in terms of getting their own careers jump started. So it's been a very interesting session. I think a lot of us have very similar backgrounds. I won't bother to go into mine right now. But you have me all fired up. And of course, shout out to my fellow Jamaicans, Ingrid, meeting you for the first time, but also to Shanoy, fellow cross culturalist. And as I said, we all share similar passions, similar interests, similar backgrounds. And I think it's a wonderful group. You will be hearing from me, Rachel, and I look forward to being part of this forum. But thanks so much for this evening.
Thank you.
You know, Rachel, let me say one thing, and I will be quiet. So a little advertising for CETAR USA. Last year, I was part of the POC panel, and there was also a panel that was for white fragility, so white privilege. This year, they're going to combine them, and basically, the POC panel is practitioners of color, right? People of color. The BIPOC movement is moving further, and that's where we need to bridge SIETAR Florida to Latin America and the Caribbean. Since this awareness of discrimination and racism and blackness, et cetera, one thing that I've been pretty successful and I'm pushing is to show is that racism and blackness is not seen the same as in the Caribbean or South America. So for example, a lot of people are saying there's privilege in the Caribbean, right? So it's more classism and colorism and racism. And we need your voices, people in the Caribbean and Latin America, because I recently did some work with Chile. They go, we have racism here. And they have obviously classism hierarchy. And they were basically saying, yeah, I mean, we know that the people that are in the lower echelon are usually dark, and then the others are lighter, and they're the ones with the opportunities. And I said, well, that's racism. It's not just racism. They know their place. When you say to somebody, you know your place, then when I come along, if I look like somebody who knows their place, I'm not going to get, one, the opportunity or the respect to hear what I have to say in my position of power coming from another country. So we need the world, because the world is a big result of colonization and with the results different ways. And I think the US needs to hear that from the Caribbean and Latin American region.
I completely agree. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rachel. I'm quite happy to hear that in particular, because a key thing for me as well, is that, as I mentioned before, is that often people across the Caribbean or even within the same country, you take Jamaica as an example, and we are so very stratified, and maybe not in the way that in India is, for example, but we do all still have unconscious biases that are existing within the workplace. So when you pull together people from very different backgrounds and you have a very uptown culture versus a downtown culture, or you may have someone who's Rastafarian or different sort of faith dynamics, and the age gap and the gender gap and the youth cohort versus the more senior personnel, it's just a case for disaster. And so many people would not necessarily think of cultures within that space. But I do think that this is a conversation we need to be having across the Caribbean region, across the Latin America and Caribbean region. So I'm glad you raised that, Pat, in Patricia, about it being, look at all the ways that we are biased in such ways that we're not aware of. And often we take it for granted. I watched a video, for example, and someone walked up to a young lady and said, "Is this your real hair?" And she was offended, and people were saying they didn't understand why it was seen as being a racist sort of persuasion. But behind that, there was a layer that she was explaining that, as a Black woman, for you to ask if her hair was real, it came with the pre-assumption that she wears false hair. So So, it's lots of these little things that people do all the time. There are all the memes that people share about Chinese, or they share about Jamaicans, or, Caucasians, etc. And in our different spaces, it's time for us to really be reflecting on how we are also discriminating, how we are a part of the problem, and how we need to have intercultural or cultural awareness trainings as a part of our lives.
Thank you so much. Yes, we have work to do.
We definitely do. And it takes a village in all things. So we have to work together. This can't just be a one cultural group issue. This is a social justice issue. This is something that we all need to get our pull up our sleeves and get into the trenches and start working together. So we're very pleased to take on a lot of these issues that are coming across. We had a program about unconscious bias back in the spring, I believe. I did put the link for our YouTube channel in the chat. We've had several programs over the last couple of years that we've recorded. This one will be included in that portfolio of videos. And we're excited to see what everyone else in the membership is excited about. What is your specialty? What are you passionate about? We want to hear from the research that you're doing, from the experience that you've had. What are you doing in the field of interculturality? It's very important for us to band together and unite, because, as the Haitian motto is l'union fait la force. So we are only going to be strong if we are united.
So speaking about strength, I want to take the mic to invite you all to applaud Rachel. Curtis knows, she is his right hand. When we're busy doing our work, Rachel is there creating all of this. We're volunteers. SIETAR USA is volunteering. And I know Yuko and I spoke about it, so I'm speaking through Yuko and she speaks through me. Being part of this organization, being a member or being on the board, it's creating leadership skills, it's applying communication, it's really professional development besides personal development. And time really flies. When I realized when Curtis and Rachel came, it was before 2020, right? It was before that. And now we're coming to almost the end of what we call a term on the board. Guys, step up. We never want to burn out. We want to refresh like Rachel and being so excited. And we never go anywhere because honestly, we're a former president, former this, former that. So we leave a little bit of status, but we're always there. And so, step in, join us. One, because we're fun and we want to learn from you and we want you to learn from us. And we want to welcome you in this huge family because it's a small world after all. It truly is. So Rachel, thank you for everything. I know that you'll soon be looking for a replacement, not replacement, but you'll be looking for a transition person to take care of programs, but Rachel is not going anywhere. It's just a position of officer that would be transitioning. Curtis, anything to add about joining the board?
I just endorse everything you said, Patricia, 100%. We are looking for people who have a passion for intercultural relations and who are creative, and we invite you to join us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We always say we don't get paid anything, but boy, what we get is priceless. And I promise you. So we can have a side conversation with that. I'll tell you, out of everybody that's there, one of the richest relationships, if I have to pick anything, just because we worked, we had fun, we made money, and we made a difference in people's careers, is my connection with Janet in Jamaica with a big company I can't mention here. Boy, have we changed lives. And we look at each other at the end and we go high five, because it's amazing. And now we're colleagues and friends. It's quite amazing. So it is more to be built, and we need you to do that. Newcomers, new blood.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and catch up with us at SIETARFlorida@gmail.com, and we'll make sure to get you plugged in. This is a fun group, but we are passionate about being cross-cultural, and you've heard everyone on our panel this evening, how they got started and what drives them and their experiences. And we want to hear from you as well. So I just put our email account into the chat again, and want to thank all of our panelists for being vulnerable and willing to share your experiences and the benefits of SIETAR Florida this evening. And with that, good night. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bonne nuit.